Good evening. Can everyone hear me? This is on. Great. All right, so my name is Jack Lawrence, and this semester I looked at Amazon as well, so thank you, Paula, for the intro. Specifically, I looked at middle mile transportation, and I looked at it from a loss prevention standpoint. So before I even start, I'm just going to define some terms so that we're on the same page. So if I say AFP, that means Amazon Freight Partner. Basically, Amazon contracts out all its delivery in the middle mile so that it's more efficient and we can let trucking companies do our trucking, and then we do what we do best. Paula also talked about that as far as expertise, right? So AFP, Amazon Freight Partner. If I say UEM, unexecuted moves. So basically, packages are supposed to go from point A to point B. If at any point they don't get to point B, that's an unexecuted move. And that could be fraudulent, theft, accidents happen, stuff like that. Gas cards, so I'm going to talk about gas card fraud. Each truck is assigned a credit card for fueling purposes. So anytime that credit card is used for something other than fuel, that's a problem. And basically we want to target unexecuted moves in gas cards because there was a lot of data in those areas, and it's easier to look at that and then apply it to larger aspects. All right, so this is a photo of Amazon's transportation network in terms of global mile, middle mile, and then final mile. So again, final mile is from a sort center, fulfillment center to the customer. So basically, everything that arrives on your doorstep, that's final mile. Global mile is everything as it comes into the ports. So mainly on the West Coast, mainly California. A lot of things coming across the Pacific Ocean via Asian countries, stuff like that. Everything else is the middle mile. So if you look at this big chunk, this whole network is middle mile. So that's fulfillment centers, it's docks, it's sort centers, it includes vendors, it's all trucking and rail. So the big problems that happen in the middle mile are that packages change hands a lot, and they're also longer stages of delivery. So Amazon might not keep track of a package for 5 days or 3 days or anything like that when it's changing hands, so they don't know if it's gone until 5 days after it might be gone, or they don't know that they don't know who took it or what happened to it because it changed hands 3 times or was supposed to change hands 3 times before it was reported missing, right? So basically, the problem statement is that Amazon can save millions of dollars if they limit fraudulent activity in middle mile transportation. So for my literature review, I wanted to look at the industry as a whole. So I wanted to look at delivery, retail stores, theft, fraud, anything like that. And at first I went to final mile and retail theft. So I feel like that was the easiest example and people might know the most about it. So I looked at, that would be like Target employees taking things off shelves for themselves. It would be an Amazon final mile delivery driver that's supposed to put something on your doorstep and instead they take it for themselves and sell it on eBay, right? It's funny because I found that there's a Walmart store that has a police station inside of it. Not really sure how that's supposed to work, but and a lot of the delivery drivers for Amazon are seasonal employees for the holidays. So if you think they're only working from December to January, they know they're not going to have a job, so why not just take some stuff and try to make a quick buck off of it as well. Then I went to delivery theft, that's the final mile stuff. And then middle mile gets a little more sophisticated. So some of those thefts in retail might be worth a few grand, a few $1,000s. Once you get into middle mile, you're talking about $500,000 to $1 million worth of cargo in one delivery. So you get organized crime, you get more strategic crime, you get repeat offenders more often, and it gets really hard to track, and it's really worth a lot of money. My cousin is the one that I worked on because he works at Amazon. I worked with him on this project, and he said, if a thief can steal $100,000 in one job, you have a customer for life. They're never going to stop pursuing that big hit. I also looked at J.B. Hunt as a delivery comparison. They're a big trucking company, so they talked about how they have locks on their trailers, how they keep their shipyards safe using surveillance cameras, tracking who comes in and out of shipyards, lights, all that kind of stuff. And they also, Amazon has a loss prevention team. J.B. Hunt talked about their risk management team. So it's all kind of the same stuff from that perspective. Okay, so for my data, I wanted to look at a few different things. So I looked at the sum total of the gas card charges. The database flagged anything that was too low or too high. So if you think about it, a diesel truck, semi-truck, it costs about $500, give or take, to fuel it. So anything that was too low would get flagged, or anything that was astronomically high would get flagged. So people that go into the convenience stores and buy snacks, or they fuel their personal vehicle, they fuel their friend's car, all that kind of stuff. Those kind of low purchases would get flagged as potentially fraudulent. Or if someone filled multiple trucks and then used them for a company like Walmart instead of using them for Amazon, that kind of large charge would show up as well. So you can see, this is only 3 weeks worth of data from the end of July to early August that I sectioned out, and they averaged $23,000 a week of potentially fraudulent charges. So 3 weeks, that's almost $70,000. If you scale that to a year, that's $1.2 million worth of theft, and that's just by using the gas cards for things other than gas. So that's a big chunk. Another piece of cumulative data I looked at was unexecuted moves per week. So here I have all the UEMs in week 1, and then as we go through the year, this was sectioned out between March, this is around June, and then this was late August. So the only thing that made these go down was that Amazon started sending out warning letters to the AFPs. They basically said, I have a picture of the warning letter here, and it just says, you received payment for an empty move that was not complete. UEMs are fraudulent activity. Here's what you need to do instead. And if this becomes a problem repeatedly, we're gonna nix you from our program. So just by sending out these warnings, you can see the trend down. This peak was right before Prime Week. So Amazon does Prime in the middle, Prime Week in the middle of the summer. And so there's a spike in deliveries, so there's a spike in fraud. That's kind of how it works. Coincidentally, the guy that was in charge of sending out the warnings went on vacation that week. Didn't tell anybody, stopped sending out warnings, all of a sudden there's a spike, which is honestly kind of funny that something that subtle could make a big difference. So then I also looked at some aggregate data. So I have UEMs by contractor, and you probably can't see it from, maybe you can, but this is the ID number, and it's 40 UEMs, 37 UEMs, 25 UEMs, all the way down to people that are only like single digits. So the point I want to make there is that if we have harsh consequences for not doing your job, the biggest offenders, if we get rid of them as a whole, rather than trying to chase down individual drivers, we have a chance to cut out a big portion of fraud, kind of at the source rather than at the end. This follows with this pie chart. So I sorted this as how many flagged gas card purchases we have in each state throughout the United States. And the funny part is that this blue area accounts for Michigan, California, Florida, and Maryland. The orange area is every other state. So if you think Michigan, Canada border, California, West Coast border, Maryland, Baltimore's port, and then Florida, that would be like South American, Latin American countries coming in. But basically, if we focus all our resources in 4 states in making sure that we deactivate cards, except for diesel fuel, you know, it's not going to work at a gas station that doesn't sell diesel, or it's not going to work at, it's only going to work at gas stations that don't have convenience stores attached to them. Stuff like that. If we focus our efforts in those 4 states, I mean, we have a chance to cut out 75% of the fraudulent activity rather than trying to focus on the entire country and kind of getting lost. Okay, so the results and recommendations, obviously continue the warnings, that works great. Gas cards, we have potential thresholds. Your card won't work if you're not buying enough. Your card won't work if you buy too much. Amazon issued the cards to drivers instead of the trucks. The cards used to be assigned to each individual truck, and then whoever drove it would use it. That becomes a problem if 3 different drivers use the same truck, and then they don't know who committed the fraud. Whereas if each driver has their card, obviously they can keep track. Same thing with sending in receipts. If you have to send in your receipt for what you bought, you're going to be more likely to spend it on what you're supposed to spend it on. And then I talked about the statewide efforts. But really, like, the overarching way to solve this problem, the point was made, we're in loss prevention, not loss identification. It's not enough to know where we're going wrong, and it's not enough to try to chase down criminals after the crime's committed all the time. We want to stop it from happening in the beginning. So if we enact harsh AFP accountability processes, we have a chance to cut it off at the source. So instead of tracking down one driver for fraudulent activity, we'll track down the AFP and say, hey, we're having problems with this driver, or we had a problem here. If this keeps occurring, we're going to cut off your entire business. That puts the responsibility in their hands and keeps them accountable for what they are hired to do, which is deliver packages for us successfully. So in conclusion, Amazon should enact harsh disciplinary actions towards AFP offenders, and we should have an automated gas card investigation process to identify offenders faster, prevent loss before it happens. I'll take questions in a second. First, I want to thank Beth Hogan for being my advisor. Thank you for being so patient. Thank you for guiding me and keeping me on task, for the deadline reminders, and just for your advice, having done this before with other students, telling me what would work and what wouldn't work. Big help. My cousin, Patrick Conrad, a huge help. I also live with him, so like that's a huge help too. But just for being so supportive and open, it's cool to see just like how these businesses work, and I didn't necessarily seek out a specific project. Instead, I just tried to listen as much as I could, and the project kind of happened on its own. So I appreciate Pat for sitting down with me for all those hours. And then finally, my professional writing class professor, Dr. Lily White, really helped me put my report together. So pro tip, if you have a final project, you should take a professional writing course alongside that too. Okay, that's all I have.
Questions for Jack?
Yeah.
I was just wondering, how many gas cards or drivers was the 1.2 million average loss? Was that just the 4 states that you had identified, or?
Yeah, so there were 851 total purchases made in those 3 weeks, but I don't know specifically like how many cards. It was for all the states though, so that's where I got all the state data for that. Yeah.
Other questions?
All right, thank you, Jack.
Yeah.
All right, our next presenter, How?